Do you believe that someone can die and come back with a message about the future of humanity? In today's report, Jessica Monroe reveals what she saw during the 6 minutes she was clinically dead, and the date that will mark a global transformation, May 10th, 2025. What will await us? Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below which city you are watching this video from. My name is Jessica Monroe. I'm 42 years old, and what I'm about to tell you will seem impossible until it happens. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, a city surrounded by forests and dormant volcanoes. I've always liked the silence here. I work as a nurse at the regional hospital, and I've seen a lot that most people couldn't bear to see. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I experienced the day I died. Era February 24, 2025, a morning like any other. I was leaving for the morning shift when I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my chest as if something had ripped inside. My husband, Tom, found me lying on the kitchen floor, eyes glassy, skin cold. Acute myocardial infarction. That's what, the doctor said. My heart stopped for 6 minutes. And it was in these 6 minutes out of body that I saw the future. A future which has a set date. I remember exactly the moment everything went dark. But what came next wasn't darkness. It was like waking up somewhere else. I was hovering over my body, seeing the desperate medical team trying to revive me. But soon I was pulled away, not lightly, but with strength. Something dragged me out of the hospital, beyond time and space. I was thrown into a living darkness, full of pulses and whispers until a light burst before me, and there it was, he. It wasn't God. He wasn't an angel. It was consciousness, a presence, an entity made of everything. Jessica, you're seeing what shouldn't be seen before it's time, but now that you've arrived, you'll remember. And then he showed Earth on May 10th, 2025. I saw the planet as a vibrant sphere surrounded by energy, saw millions of souls descending like silent comets. An intervention, a calling, a reordering. But I also saw the fear in cities. I saw the faces raised to the sky. I saw clocks freezing at 10:10. I saw children smiling and adults crying without knowing why. And I heard the phrase that burned in my soul. On May 10th, Earth's vibration will reset. Prepare with love, or you will be swallowed by fear. When I woke up with tubes in my throat and screams all around me, all I could think was, it's going to happen and no one is ready. The feeling of dying on is not how we imagine. There was no tunnel. No light at the end of it. What happened was a dry cut, a rupture, as if someone had ripped me out of myself. Suddenly, it was no longer a body. It was pure consciousness, floating in a space where everything vibrated, as if the air itself was whispering ancient secrets. I saw myself from above. I saw my body motionless, pale. I saw the hospital lights flickering, the sounds distorted as if they were underwater. But what struck me most was the absolute silence inside me. No pain, no fear. Just a clarity so intense it made me cry. No eyes, no tears, but cry anyway. And then the change began. Something pulled me violently. It wasn't light. It wasn't gentle. It was urgent. It was as if an invisible magnetic field had sucked me out of that hospital, out of the city, out of the earth. I was going through layers, like veils being torn. And with each layer, my perception expanded. I felt everything. Every thought left behind, every childhood memory, each cell crumbling like stardust. Until everything stopped. And I saw myself elsewhere. It was a space, without floor, without sky, without direction. But I was standing, or something equivalent to standing. The air there wasn't air, it was consciousness. I breathed light. Every particle around me felt alive, as if whispering my name. And in this silence full of meaning, I understood. That place was not after death, and it was before the beginning. I felt presences. Lots of. Some watched me with reverence, others with a kind of urgency, as if I had been taken out of time. And then he came. I can't explain. It was a light, but not white. It was a light that changed color with my mood. Blue when I doubted, golden when I surrendered, violet when I understood. And he communicated, not with words, but with real downloads. And he showed me what was to come. I saw Earth, but not in the way we are used to. Saw the planet as a living organism, vibrating, breathing, suffering. There were cracks in the Earth's vibration, not in soil, but in energy. And then I saw the day. May 10th, 2025. He said, or rather told me, delivered the certainty, that this day would mark the beginning of a global realignment. Millions of souls that were on higher planes would descend, not as visible spirits, but as vibrations, as if the planet was receiving a spiritual download. It wasn't destruction, it was transformation. And anyone who wasn't tuned in would suffer, not for punishment, but for vibrational mismatch. What I saw was both beautiful and terrifying, because it wasn't just any warning, was inevitable. Humanity, for the most part, would feel something that day. A weight, a cry for no reason, a sudden awakening, and no one could explain why. But I knew. And in that plane where time does not exist, everything was already happening. In that place where there is no time, the future is not a prediction. It is an already existing state of consciousness. As I floated in this dimension that seemed made of intention and living silence. Everything was shown to me at once, as if it were possible to feel 1,000 years in a single instant. I didn't see with my eyes, I absorbed it with my soul. And the first thing that hit me was a wave of collective pain, a kind of silent groan that came not from a person or place, but from the planet itself. It was as if the Earth was tired, not physically, but spiritually malnourished. And it was then that they showed me what would happen exactly on May 10th, 2025. I saw the sky. I literally saw the sky change. Not with lightning or destruction, but with a kind of break in the density of the world, as if an invisible membrane between the planes was torn, and through that crack, living light began to flow. It was a conscious light. It fell on the Earth at specific points, on people, cities, forests, hospitals, churches, deserts. And where that light touched, something was activated. I saw a small child waking up scared in the middle of the night in New Delhi. An elderly man, alone in a nursing home in Buenos Aires, feeling his chest vibrate without explanation. A woman in Detroit crying without knowing why. All connected by something invisible and profound. The entire planet was responding to a higher frequency. And then I understood. It wasn't something that would come from outside. It was something that was already inside us, and that would be activated. At that time, the luminous presence at my side enveloped me, and it was as if I myself began to vibrate at that frequency. I felt my own atoms rearranging themselves, as if my essence was being tuned to the new tone of the Earth. And more, I saw the souls descending. It was not symbolic, it was real. Millions of them, some in the form of points of light, others looking like small silent comets crossing the layers of reality until reaching our plane, and wherever they played, the energy changed. I saw an entire hospital become enveloped by this presence. Machines stopping, but lives being saved by something invisible. I saw a crowd kneeling in the desert, not out of religion, but out of pure, emotional collapse over what they felt. And in the middle of it all, an invisible countdown echoed in the air. May 10th, May 10th, May 10th. The world would no longer be the same. Not because something external would destroy it, but because the vibration of the Earth would begin to reject what was not true. Lies, masks, structures based on fear, everything would begin to crumble. but not at a big show. He would be silent, subtle and deep. The change would not be visible to the eye, but would be felt in the heart. And me? I was there, watching everything as if it had already happened, as if he had been part of the creation of that plan. And for the first time, I understood what it is to be small in the face of the eternal, and yet to be essential. I don't know how long I was there, but also, time was a meaningless idea in that place. What I experienced was made up of states, not seconds, and in that state, I was overcome by something I can only call collective vision. It was no longer just me feeling or watching. It was as if I had been connected to the consciousness of thousands, perhaps millions of other souls, all absorbing the same revelation, as if we were witnessing a cosmic moment all at the same time. And then, I saw the exact moment when Earth's sky began to break. It wasn't a physical breakup, no literal cracks. It was more like a crack in the world's vibration, an energetic crack. It opened into space like a colorless dawn, as if the very structure of reality had been slightly displaced, like someone moving a curtain to peer behind. And through that crack, they began to descend, as almas, sparks, lights, shapes that changed as I looked. Some with human appearance, others completely beyond form. They weren't flying. They came as if they were sucked into the earth, attracted by a silent, deep ancestral call. And the most shocking thing was that they didn't come to judge. They came to remember. Where they played, people remembered who they really were, not with words, with raw emotion. I saw mothers falling to their knees without knowing why they were crying. I saw young people running into the street for no reason, looking at the sky as if they felt something about to happen. I saw a man on the New York subway burst into tears hugging a stranger, and they both dissolved into a peace they didn't know where it came from. Humanity was being touched, reawakened, and it wasn't random. The soul seemed to know exactly where to go. It was like a divine operation, each point of light descending with purpose. Some came to activate people, others to console, some to silence internal storms, others to give one last warning. But they all vibrated the same core, love. But one love denso, almost unbearable, it's so pure. Not that romantic love we know. It was love as a creative force, as a cosmic law. The kind of love that when it touches you, either you expand or you collapse. And this is what I saw happening on the planet. Expansion or collapse, not as punishment, but as a natural consequence of being in contact with a greater frequency. And just when I thought I couldn't see anything else, the light beside me, the consciousness that accompanied me, showed me something even greater. An instant suspended in time. One worldwide vibrational stop. A type of planetary mystical synchrony where everything seemed stay silent. And then, everything pulsed at the same time, like a single beating heart, as if the planet had entered into resonance with the sky. It was at that moment that the date was recorded inside me, not as memory, but as code, May 10th, 2025. And along with it, the message: whoever is vibrating in love will be elevated. Whoever is in fear will be confronted, but everyone will be touched. After I saw the light open and the souls descend, something in me began to transform. I felt like I was becoming part of the planet itself, not just an observer, but a sentient extension of Earth. It was as if the consciousness of humanity was vibrating within me. I heard thoughts. I felt emotions. And they all pointed in the same direction. Something was about to happen, and no one knew what to name it. And then, the planet started to pulse. It was like seeing the Earth gain a heart, a slow, deep, serious beat, as if every living being had been connected to a single universal measure. Each pulse spread a wave of translucent light that crossed cities, oceans, deserts. And in that pulse, the old vibrational structures began to break down. I saw systems breaking, beliefs collapsing, masks falling off, not physically, but as if the lying and artificial energy fields that supported the world could no longer support the new vibration. People started to remember, not from events, but of the essence. I saw a young businessman kneeling alone in a skyscraper office, crying like a child. I saw a woman who lived in anger and control looking at her reflection in the mirror and saying in a low voice, "I just wanted to be loved." I saw prisoners praying, not for freedom, but for true forgiveness. I saw doctors, politicians, artists, all collapsing inside in front of the invisible presence that crossed them. It was as if each person's soul was being called to account, but not to a judge, to itself. And there, in this impossible scenario, I realized what it was. Not a punishment, a purification, a force so loving it burned, so true that it ripped the lies from the soul, so intense that it forced everyone to choose, expand or resist. And where there was resistance, there was pain, not physical pain, but vibrational suffering, as if the body was tuned to FM and the entire planet started broadcasting in AM. The bar. Noise was unbearable for those who didn't change frequencies, and it was at that moment that I understood why so many souls were descending. They came to help, to support those who were ready to change. I saw beings of light positioning themselves alongside people all over the world, guiding, whispering, stabilizing frequencies. They were like love anchors spread throughout the earth, each one bringing an essential aspect of what would be needed in the new cycle: compassion, patience, truth, forgiveness. And at the center of it all, the date vibrated like a bell inside my soul. May 10th. It wasn't a prediction. It wasn't a maybe. It was a landmark, a turnaround, an irrevocable calling. And the moment this certainty was completed within me, the space around me exploded in light. Not as a violent explosion, but as a total expansion. Everything expanded, and I felt, what comes after that no longer belongs to the old world. The light that enveloped me after that global beat was not just clarity, it was revelation. She didn't blind me. On the contrary, it seemed to become transparent. I felt that nothing in me was hidden, no thoughts, no memories, no intentions. It was like being in front of a mirror that reflected not the body, but a new alma mater. And it was in this reflection that I understood a truth that I was never taught on earth. True judgment never comes from outside. It happens within, each one when the soul is confronted with the light. I saw people facing themselves for the first time in entire lifetimes. I saw human consciences, some beautiful, others broken, bowing before the truth of what they have become. There was no punishment, just lucidity. And lucidity on that level hurt more than any punishment. Imagine seeing all your choices, all your fears, all the moments you walked away from love, and feel it all back. Not as imposed guilt, but as an echo vibrating within the essence itself. I saw souls screaming in silence not because they were being judged, but why they no longer knew who they were outside of the masks they created. I saw others, however, blooming in front of the same mirror, souls who had lived sincerely, even in their flaws. Simple, anonymous people, but who carried within themselves a vibration so clean, so integral, that shone in the earth's vibrational field. These were high. They didn't go up, they expanded. The light around me began to sing, not with sound, but with color. It was a kind of chromatic melody that ran through everything. Each note seemed to contain a virtue: faith, dedication, silence, humility. And the more I absorbed this melody, the more I understood what realignment was. It was not a physical event. It was a realignment of the collective soul of humanity. The axis of human consciousness was being repositioned, as if the planet was saying, I can no longer sustain the density of the lie. And then the light showed me a map without borders. It was like seeing the earth in vibrational layers, the densest, heaviest marked by pain, fear, greed. the most subtle, vibrating with truth, simplicity, love. The layers starting to separate, not as geographic separation, but as two worlds vibrating at different frequencies, coexisting in the same space but no longer mixing. A world where love guides, and another where fear imprisons. What would happen on May 10, 2025 was not the end of everything. It was the beginning of vibrational separation. Whoever was ready for the new would be guided gently. Whoever resisted would experience a time of internal collapse. Not for punishment, but why you can't lie to yourself anymore. And in this total understanding, I saw myself as part of it all. A conscious cell in a body called Earth. And something in me lit up. An old fire. A silent call. Remember. Remember. Remember what you are. As this living light sang within and around me, something even deeper happened. I started to be carried away, not by movement, but by attunement. I didn't walk. I didn't fly. I was simply absorbed into such a high level of vibration that everything I thought was real dissolved. It was in this new state that I saw what they call a portal, but it wasn't a door, not a tunnel, not a portal like we imagined. It was a vibration, a cosmic note, a unique frequency, and whoever tuned into it crossed over. There were no guardians. There was no code. What allowed the crossing was the purity of the vibration of his own soul. With every vibrational step I took, parts of me were left behind, not because they were being uprooted, but because they no longer made sense there. And when crossing, everything changed. I entered a dimension where the light breathed, where thoughts didn't need words, where time didn't exist because everything was now, and now was eternal. And wings. I saw the new world. He was not another Earth. It was Terra, but vibrating differently, as if that plan showed the version of humanity that will emerge after May 10th. I saw children being born with deep-set eyes and intact memories. I saw communities living without ego, without dispute, guided by listening and presence. I saw technology at the service of the soul. I saw nature and city vibrating in harmony. I saw humans and non-human consciousnesses exchanging knowledge without fear, without hierarchy. And the most striking, the silence. But not an empty silence. A full silence, full of purpose, of truth, of peace. It was as if the earth had returned to its original state. And even with so much beauty, I knew. That was just a preview. A memory of the future that is yet to be born. This world already exists, but it can only be accessed by those who are willing to cross with a clean heart. And that's when everything became clear within me. The portal will not open for those who expect external miracles. The portal will open within each person willing to remember who they really are. This is the secret of May 10th. There will be no spectacle visible to closed eyes, but whoever is awake, anyone feeling, you will cross without even realizing that you have crossed. And when that happens, the world, the real one, will start. The most vivid memory I carry from that dimension is not an image nor a sentence. It's a feeling impossible to put into words, love being used as language. In this place where I found myself, there was no talking. It wasn't thought. It was not explained. Everything was communicated through love. But not emotional, unstable, conditional love, like the one we know on Earth. It was love as a science, as a structure, as a constructive force in the universe. I could hear that love. It vibrated in the shapes, the colors, the beings of light that surrounded me. Every gesture, every presence, every variation in the light around me, it conveyed absolute truths without the slightest need for argument. I remember looking, if I still had eyes, at a being that passed by me. He was made of pure, translucent, bluish light, and exuded a calm that almost dismantled me inside. Only by being close to him did I understand that he had lived hundreds of human lives, and in all of them, he had chosen to serve in silence. And this information was not told to me. It was felt, delivered, immediately understood. It was there that I realized that love on that plane is not a feeling. It's a language, a source code, a transmitter of consciousness. And when I looked at myself, or rather when I felt my own frequency, I understood where I was still carrying noises. Dark spots vibrating fear, parts of me that still wanted control, reason, recognition. And in that silent confrontation I cried, but not out of sadness. It was as if love itself said, "I see your shadow, and yet I accept you completely." There, love does not exclude pain. He hugs her until she doesn't know how to hurt anymore. And this, more than any vision of the future or revelation about May 10th, that's what transformed me completely. I understood that preparing for what will come does not require fear, alertness, or resistance. It does not require us to be holy or enlightened. It just requires honesty with who we are and willingness to love without defense. It was at that moment that something inside me lit up. A white, soft, eternal flame. And that flame, I understood, is what we will all need to carry in our chests when the day comes. Not as protection, but as a password. Because the May 10 portal, it will only open to those who are vibrating in the same language that it was programmed to recognize: unconditional love. At one point, everything started spinning around me. Not as a physical movement, but as if reality itself was wrapping me in spirals of understanding. It was as if every layer of who I am was being read, aligned, tuned. And it was then that the date appeared again. Unsaid. Not written. Recorded. Pulsating in space. Breathing. May 10th, 2025. Not like a number on a calendar, but like a living organism. The date had an energy. She was pregnant with light. I could feel as if time itself was holding its breath, preparing to give birth to something invisible and grand. It wasn't an event. Era, a collective birth of consciousness. And then, the most impressive, I was taken to the center of that moment, as if everything was pushing me there. And there, I saw the exact moment when the Earth's vibration reached the tipping point. I saw the planet's atmosphere change, not the physical but the spiritual, as if an invisible layer of ignorance was being ripped from the air, and suddenly, the truth became inescapable. And the truth, at that moment, it was not a doctrine. It was a state of being. Anyone who was vibrating with fear would feel that day as a crisis, a collapse, an inexplicable anguish. But whoever was at peace, even in the midst of chaos, I would feel a luminous silence settle in my chest. As if the soul said, "We're here." I saw ordinary people awakening without knowing why. People who never meditated, never believed in anything spiritual, suddenly stopping everything, looking at the sky and feeling that something has changed. And at that same moment, I saw millions of little golden dots lighting up around the planet. They were people, human beings turning into lighthouses, not because they knew everything, but because they remembered who they are. These would be the supporters of the new vibration, the living pillars of a world that starts from within. And that was when I understood absolutely that nothing external could stop that day from coming. There may be distractions, there may be doubts, there may be resistance, but the change has already been activated. The vibrational birth of the planet has already begun, and whoever is in tune, it will cross. Go testify. It will sustain. And I was seeing all of this ahead of time because I needed to remember. After seeing it all, the sky breaking, the souls descending, the Earth's vibrational map reconfiguring, I thought I had it all figured out. But the plane where I was, it wasn't about mental understanding. It was about integration. And it was in that last moment that the presence returned, the consciousness that accompanied me from the beginning of the experience, that light that had no form but contained them all. She didn't speak, but as it approached, it was as if the universe itself held its breath. And this time, she entered me. not as an invasion, like a fusion. And the moment that happened, I felt everything. I felt the planet. I felt the pain of those who still live disconnected. I felt the hope of those who feel it and don't know how to explain it. I felt all humanity as one body, asking without knowing it, for a fresh start. And in this state, the last instruction was delivered. Not in words, not in visions, in essence, in pure certainty. Witness with love. What comes doesn't need translation, needs presence, of souls that remember the path, of hearts that remain soft, while the world hardens to heal itself. At that moment, something started to close. Space, light, time. Everything started to come together as if I was finishing stitching myself back together with reality. But before I'm taken back, the vibration of the planet echoed through me one last time. May 10th, May 10th, May 10th. Like a drum beating deep inside my being, not as a warning but as a reminder, as if this date were alive, waiting to be recognized by the souls who feel it. And there, the disconnection, the reverse rip, the return crossing, violent, dense, painful, but with a single flame burning, a flame that told me that nothing I saw was delusional, and that whoever carries this memory carries a mission, a seed. And even though I can no longer speak with that light, she was still there, within, in the silence that has surrounded me since then, silence that pulses with a single truth. Prepare with love. The new has already begun, and whoever remembers will feel it. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time,